I am damn sure that Madeleine McCann was not abducted.
Wow. What do you think happened then?
I tend to agree with the Portuguese police.
If she died then, how could we have disposed or hidden her body, when there was an immediate threat? It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in there.
And I just looked, and it was quite dark, and I was just looking at Madeleine's bed, and I was thinking, is that her? I was looking for, why is that Madeleine there?
This is 3-year-old Madeleine McCann, who disappeared from her family's holiday apartment in Portugal on May 3, 2007. Her parents, Gerry and Kate, claimed she was kidnapped while they ate dinner just 180 feet away. But that same night, an Irish family witnessed something chilling: a man carrying a small blonde child in light pajamas. At first, police treated it as the key lead. But years later, the witness, Martin Smith, admitted the man's walk reminded him of Gerry McCann himself. For nearly 2 decades, this single sighting has fueled one of the most disturbing questions in the case. Was it really a stranger? Or was it Madeleine's own father? To understand why this moment became so controversial, we need to go back to that very night in Portugal, and step inside the timeline as it actually unfolded. It was May 3, 2007. An ordinary spring evening at the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Families were winding down, children tucked into bed, and parents enjoying dinner and conversation in the warm night air. In apartment 5A, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann slept beside her 2 younger siblings while her parents, Gerry and Kate, joined friends at the resort's tapas bar, just 180 feet away. To them, it felt safe. They believed nothing could go wrong in a place like this. But just after 10 p.m., that illusion shattered. Kate returned to check on the children and noticed the bedroom door open wider than she remembered. A gust of wind suddenly slammed it shut. Her heart sank. When she opened the door again, the twins were sleeping soundly, but Madeleine's bed was empty. The window stood open, the shutters raised. Within seconds, Kate was running back to the restaurant, shouting the words that would change the course of their lives forever. "They've taken her." Panic spread like wildfire. Friends, resort staff, and guests poured into the complex, searching frantically through corridors, pools, and gardens. The police were called, but by the time they arrived, the scene was already chaotic. Potential clues had been trampled, fingerprints smeared, evidence destroyed in the desperate rush to find the missing girl. And while this chaos unfolded, just a few streets away, another family was making their way home. Irish holidaymaker Martin Smith and his relatives were walking down a narrow, dimly lit street around the same time Kate McCann raised the alarm. That's when they saw him. A man carrying a small child in his arms, walking briskly toward the beach. The child appeared to be 3 or 4 years old, blonde, dressed in light-colored pajamas, the same kind Madeleine had been wearing. At first, the Smiths thought nothing of it, just a father taking his daughter to bed after a long day. But the image lingered, the way the man avoided eye contact, the way the child's head lolled against his shoulder, limp and silent. Hours later, when news spread that a little girl had vanished from the McCann's apartment, realization hit them like a hammer. What they had witnessed was no ordinary bedtime walk. It could have been the last time anyone saw Madeleine alive. But what exactly did the Smith family see that night? And why would their words spark so much controversy in the years to come? The morning after Madeleine's disappearance, the entire resort of Praia da Luz was swarming with police, journalists, and desperate search parties. Rumors spread quickly, and soon every sighting, every noise, every shadow seemed like it could be a lead. But for Martin Smith and his family, one memory from the night before stood out above everything else. They had been walking home after dinner, a group of 9 people in total, when the figure appeared on the narrow street ahead. A man, carrying a little girl who seemed about the same age as Madeleine, blonde hair, pale pajamas, limp in his arms. At first, they convinced themselves it must be normal. The child was probably asleep. The man, a father carrying his daughter home to bed. But as the hours passed and the news of Madeleine's disappearance exploded across the media, the family began to realize what they had witnessed might not have been so ordinary after all. Martin Smith reported what he saw to Portuguese police. His account was detailed. A man between 30 and 40 years old, medium height, medium build, with brown hair. The child he carried wore light pajamas and looked lifeless, though not visibly injured. The man didn't speak, didn't acknowledge the family, just walked briskly past them, heading toward the beach. This description was recorded in the official case files, and investigators treated it as a critical sighting. At the time, the prevailing theory was that Madeleine had been abducted by an intruder who slipped into apartment 5A while the parents dined. To police, the Smith testimony seemed to support this, but the longer the investigation went on, the more questions emerged. For one, why was this sighting happening at the same time Kate McCann returned to the apartment and discovered Madeleine missing? And later, Martin Smith himself admitted something that would turn his own memory into a storm of suspicion. When he saw Gerry McCann carrying his own child off a plane in televised footage, the walk, the posture, the way he held his child, it looked eerily similar to the man he had seen in Praia da Luz. He never made a formal identification. He admitted he couldn't be certain, but that single observation was enough to ignite years of speculation, endless debates, and one of the darkest clouds hanging over the McCanns. What investigators did with the Smith family's testimony, and how it was later challenged, would shape the entire direction of the Madeleine McCann case. In the first days after Madeleine's disappearance, Portuguese police were desperate for answers. Every sighting, every rumor, every detail mattered. The Smith family's account of a man carrying a blonde child at around 10 p.m. seemed to align almost perfectly with the timeline of Kate McCann's discovery. For detectives, this could have been the moment Madeleine was taken from the resort. But from the very start, there were problems. The area where the Smith family saw the man was dark, narrow, and unfamiliar. They couldn't describe the man's face in detail, only his approximate build, age, and the way he walked. And in the days that followed, another supposed sighting emerged, the Tanner sighting, named after Jane Tanner, a friend of the McCanns who claimed she saw a man carrying a child near the apartment just minutes before. Suddenly, investigators had two different accounts, one near the McCann apartment, one further away, both describing a man with a child, both within the same crucial half hour, but could both be true. Or had one of them been a mistake? For years, the Tanner sighting was treated as the primary lead, with police convinced it showed the abductor leaving the scene. But later, British investigators with Operation Grange re-examined the evidence and suggested that Tanner may have simply seen another tourist carrying his own child back to their apartment. If that was true, then the Tanner sighting collapsed as a lead, and the Smith family's testimony suddenly became the most significant. Yet, the controversy didn't stop there. When Martin Smith admitted years later that Gerry McCann's walk reminded him of the man he saw, critics pounced. Some began arguing that the sighting could point not to a stranger, but to Madeleine's own father. Others dismissed it as coincidence, pointing out that Smith himself never claimed certainty. The result was a storm of suspicion that swirled around the McCanns for years. Every documentary, every newspaper article, every online forum returned to the same haunting question. Was the man in the Smith sighting an unknown abductor? Or Gerry McCann himself? Nearly 2 decades later, the Smith sighting still refuses to fade, and its legacy is one of the biggest reasons the Madeleine McCann case remains unsolved. As the years passed, the Smith family's testimony never disappeared from the public record, even when other leads were dismissed, even when suspects came and went. That one moment, seeing a man carrying a child in the dark streets of Praia da Luz, remained frozen in time. For investigators, it has always been a puzzle piece that never quite fit. If it was an abductor, why didn't the Smiths see a car, a hiding place, or anyone else nearby? If it was Gerry McCann, why would he be walking with a child in public at the very same moment police believe Madeleine was taken? And if it was neither, then who exactly was the man they saw? The Smiths themselves remained haunted by it. Martin Smith never backed away from his testimony, but he also never went further than admitting a similarity when he saw Gerry McCann on TV. He did not testify that it was him, only that the resemblance unsettled him. That single nuance has fueled years of debate. Meanwhile, Operation Grange, the British-led investigation, has placed more emphasis on other suspects, including known predators who were in Portugal at the time. To them, the Smith sighting may point to a stranger, an abductor who slipped away into the night. But for critics and conspiracy theorists, it remains the smoking gun they point to whenever suspicions are raised against the McCanns themselves. And so, nearly 20 years later, the sighting stands as one of the most chilling crossroads in the case. A family walking home from dinner may have seen the truth, but memory is fragile. Context changes everything, and the smallest doubt can overshadow even the clearest moment. The unanswered question is what gives this case its enduring power. Was Madeleine carried away by a stranger no one has ever identified? Or did the Smiths glimpse something far more disturbing, that the truth had been walking right in front of them all along? Do you believe the Smith family saw Madeleine's abductor that night? Or was it Gerry McCann himself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold true crime stories.